Welcome to the Dank Christian Memes podcast. Dank Christian Memes is a community on reddit.com where all kinds of Christians and all kinds of non-Christians share memes and fellowship. Our podcast covers topics related to faith, culture, current events, and Reddit. Thank you for listening. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I want to say happy holidays because we're talking about holidays and I don't want to limit myself. So happy holidays, Jacob, Void Boy, Castor, Troy, and to those in our audience. And thanks for taking some time out of your schedule.
Happy holidays to you too. Exciting time of year.
Yeah, right back at you.
So I figured we'd start in almost chronological order. We just had Thanksgiving, and we are sort of at the what I would consider. I sent Void Boy a message at one point, and I said, "Do you think that it's Christmas season yet, or do you think it's like at this particular time?" And they sent me a picture of their Christmas tree. So,
well, there is a.
I've learned my lesson about assuming what is, I guess Thanksgiving season can be part of Christmas season for some people, and I certainly wouldn't want to take that from anybody.
Correct. I feel like,
let's start by sharing our personal perspectives a little bit. I'll start with mine. It's a little heavy, and then I figure I'll pass it off to you, Castor Troy. Does that sound good?
Good to me.
Yeah.
So I have this sort of divided life. Like the first part of my life was with a family that was very difficult, made holidays very hard to enjoy, to the point where I just kind of wanted to crawl into a hole until it was over, and then maybe crawl out depending on how I felt. So the second half of my life, I was with a different family who really started to change things. And then of course, I ended up getting married and having a child. So I have now my own family that I've sort of formed in a more traditional manner. So in each of these places, I've had very different feelings about a lot of these holidays. And if you took me from different points in the timeline, we would likely come to blows on the subject. So I don't want to pretend that I'm presenting any kind of single experience, because my experience has been so different. But what about you guys? I'll throw it to Castor, Troy, and then Void Boy. I'm coming for your perspective.
Thanks. And I would say if we're starting with this part of the holiday season, so the Thanksgiving to Christmas to New Year's, that stretch that people really consider the holiday season, my experience with it, or just growing up, I grew up very poor, just inner city, basically all the stuff you see after school specials about, single teenage mom, all that stuff. That was my life. That was truly it. But I've always had my family and my extended family, we've always done holidays, specifically this time of year, really big. It wasn't we didn't exchange a lot of gifts, because again, really poor, but the emphasis was on we're together, we made it, we're doing this, we're sharing this time, this love. And getting older and realizing, oh, that's not what it was like for everybody. That wasn't people's experience. And then seeing how and why. So yeah, there's the natural stressors of, if my mom was hosting one year, or if I was living with my grandparents, and the natural stresses of the season, but it was never the obligation of the season. It was always done in love, and then just I'm stressed out because I'm having a bunch of people in the house, but we're going to have a great time. Yeah, somebody might have a little too much to drink and they might get a little out of hand, but overall, it's my holiday experiences have always been pleasant by design. And that's how I take it even now as an adult. I have friends now oh, I don't care about Christmas, or I don't care about this because it's commercialized and XYZ. And I'm hey, I don't want to step on what your personal experience is, but you can change that. You have the power to shape what this means to you. And you just said, Broclen, you have your own family now, and and it might be in the more traditional sense of, husband, wife, and the child, but you are taking all of your past experiences to make what your quote unquote holiday spirit now is. And so for me, my favorite holiday is and always will be probably Thanksgiving. Followed close second by 4th of July, which we'll get to, because Thanksgiving purely is just about, if you take away the actual origins of it, it's just about a bunch of people getting together, breaking bread, having a good time, and just sharing that moment with one another. So that's why I love it. It's hey, I get to cook for people I care about. I get to spend time with my friends and family that I might not see that often. And that's what I try to bring to it and try to keep at front of mind at this time of year. So that's my 2 cents, at least on this stretch.
Good point about like what your central holiday is necessarily. But Void Boy, what's your perspective on holidays, and have things changed for you, or has it been more of a consistent experience?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Loud and clear.
I thought I was yeah, sorry for the mic check here. But yeah, I think my perspective on holidays have changed over the years. I think over the last 5 years it's changed dramatically. Being raised a Jehovah's Witness, you were sort of taught to not participate in those holidays. So that includes like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's to an extent. Birthdays also, something that we're not allowed to do. So now, as I got out of it, I'm sort of rediscovering how to, we never grew up in a house that had any traditions. So things like holiday traditions and holiday kind of, what do you do during these things is all sort of new to me. So I never really got like a grasp of, ooh, I like this because it does that, or I like this because I know what to expect. So every year is sort of like a little bit different. I think the one that I find sort of more consistent has been Christmas, because the good thing about being a Jehovah's Witness and having a partner who always celebrates Christmas is that you don't have to fight over which side of the family are you going to go to visit. It's always going to be the one who celebrates Christmas. So that sort of settles it. It makes things
Simplify matters. Wow.
Yeah, right? It's like, okay, look at that, silver lining. And my parents, they don't care. They're just, they do their own thing. I do my thing. And that has been consistent over the last maybe like 3 years now. We go down south, where it's much warmer. And, I like just sort of the idea of you don't do anything. You just vibe, hang out with the family. And then you kind of open presents as like because that's what you do on Christmas. But it's been good. Like, I don't feel the stress of, we talked earlier about buying stuff and consumerism. I think the family here is kind of, they don't care of what, just so long as you have something. We can buy like cheap stuff, and we just give little cheap stuff for Christmas that is more aligned with what we like, so it's not as stressful. At least for me, you don't have to buy expensive stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling a lot.
Oh, I think we're going to be doing plenty of that here, because these trying to keep these holidays organized, and like we said, our experiences of them over time, it sort of defies organization here. But I'm going to be really interested to hear if you have sort of holiday whiplash on any of these holidays from going from such an extreme. But let me ask you up front, and I don't want to get you in trouble, but I am curious. Did you ever like grab a cupcake on your birthday and not tell anyone or anything? Like did you have any subtle rebellions, or were you a good little Jehovah's Witness boy and you're like, nah, man, the rules are rules, and I'm sticking to them?
Yeah, I was a rule follower, definitely. That was kind of like, I think it's in my nature to not rock the boat. I never really wanted to have like little secret birthday presents, or like have, people give me stuff. It's interesting because even once you're in it, you're told to deny and not take anything from anyone during your birthday. So I was in it very young, and that sort of got into me pretty early on. And I was very much like, no, like contraband, you're not supposed to take it. And yeah, it was pretty good. I was pretty good at it. But then after I sort of, said, oh, you're allowed to do it, it was weird. I had to kind of not force myself, but like allow myself to be, it's okay to do this. Like, you're not.
It's got to be such an interesting transition. So I'd be interested to know, as we go through these holidays, your sort of a meter of adjustment. Which one of these holidays was easier for you to work with, and which of these was like, oh man, this really goes against the grain, as opposed to how you were raised. But I want to kick it over to Jacob. Jacob, we've talked a lot about how, your faith and your experience of faith have sort of, changed or shifted over time. But what about holidays? Has holidays been something more consistent, or is that likewise sort of shifted?
For the most part, holidays are pretty consistent. I'm still very close with my family, and basically all of the extended family still lives in Oregon or California, and so the Oregon part of it still meets up for holidays. And I would say the one interruption there is, so I have a fairly consistent life history there until a few years ago when, as a lot of longtime listeners are probably aware, I lived in Israel for 3 years. And I have just been back for a little over a year now. And so there was a period of my life where this continuity of meeting up with family for holidays was interrupted, right? So I'm kind of in a period where I'm getting back into these holidays that I missed for a while. I celebrated Jewish holidays with friends over in Israel for a few years. So Hanukkah and Purim and all that. And so I know it's an interesting thing when you come back to a holiday that you haven't celebrated in a few years, and you just discover how much of it is refreshing, how much of it you feel different about, how much of it you're apathetic towards, different things like that.
Well, and I've found that, holidays may need something of a reset, that sometimes the tradition is really good, but, because you weren't able to get together every year or whatever, that actually makes when you can do that all the more valuable because you've, recognized the difference.
It does for sure.
So I want to walk a line here. I'm gonna stand on a soapbox a little bit and say that I've been in places where I felt like if I was going to do anything better than survive these holidays and just be kind of a curmudgeon, that I needed to somehow reset the holiday for myself. But I want to advise against going through holidays completely alone. That going low contact in certain situations is great and fine. And so, like, I'm going to take Thanksgiving and Christmas as an example, that maybe you don't get together with your family for any number of reasons, but doing something, even if a lot of churches will just have a Thanksgiving event, like a Thanksgiving worship service or a Thanksgiving vigil or some sort of event. I recommend that as part of a reset. It's a good idea to go to places like that where maybe you are in a room full of strangers, but you're also not entirely alone. And maybe doing that something different, even if you hated it, you're like, well, I will never set foot in a church again. Well, now you know. And that doesn't work as part of your holiday observance. So I'm guessing that holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas need those resets. Maybe birthdays for some folks. I'm guessing, St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day. No one's like, oh no, I can't handle another St. Patrick's Day. I don't know. Maybe, I'm not Irish. I'm Irish American. I'm not Irish. So, I can't say for sure. But let's bring it around to Thanksgiving. So we talked about difficult conversations. Like Troy, you mentioned this, right? That like, sometimes maybe someone's been drinking a little too much. Maybe someone just has strong opinions, didn't need a strong drink. I feel like that's like the hallmark that almost no family can avoid, the delicate subjects they'd rather avoid. That's part of getting together with family. Do you think that's true, or is that just a pessimistic attitude?
For me, I think there's truth to it. So a lot of it comes from, and this is, again, I can't speak for everyone's family dynamic because everybody's family dynamic is different. Just speaking on how I grew up, my family was really close, like immediate and extended. Like there was a point of we were all in it together. We were mostly in constant communication. Especially if you're from the Northeast, we had a bunch of cousins. Like that's just I grew up around literally dozens of cousins. So even if I didn't have siblings in the house, I would go to a house and there would still just be a lot of people. And I say all that to say that there was always a baked in, hey, you're going to be dealing with just a bunch of people who might not have the same exact opinions and viewpoints. They might have grown up on a separate side of town from you. So like the way they talk and see certain things. And I think Thanksgiving can be a microcosm of that. And for a lot of people, if you didn't grow up explicitly with and around your family, like Thanksgiving or Christmas could be a time where it's one of 3 times you might see them in a year, if that. Whereas if you're around your family constantly, and it's a thing where it's like, oh, we see each other all the time. This is just one of the big times we see each other. Like there might be a few more extended members. And so you see now, especially within the past 10 years or so, I would say just basically if you count the social media age, so let's say 2006 and beyond, like right when like Facebook and everything started to take off, there's less of an incentive to constantly gather for a lot of people because you can get that through, I don't want to say osmosis, but you get those parasocial relationships. Oh, I can check in through social media. I don't need to see them in person as much. So then when you see each other around Thanksgiving time, it's like all I've seen is those wild opinions that you might be posting that I don't get to react to in real time and rebuttal to. And so there's that apprehension, that fear. And that's always been around for a lot of people, I guess, before social media, but it's exacerbated a bit now. So yeah, there's truth to it, but I think it's just mostly, it's the same thing where if you've got a friend where you might have had a falling out, if you just haven't spoken in a while, there might be that catching up period, but there's also like, who is the version of this person now that I haven't seen in X amount of months or years, and now what am I responding to? What am I reacting to? Am I giving them the same amount of grace that I would give them if we were together 24/7, as opposed to once or twice a year? So I do think that there's truth to it, but I don't think it. And again, this is every family dynamic is different, but I don't think it should be the pervasive thought every time you're interacting with family, and that's just my view on it.
Yeah, I think if you can have realistic expectations of your family, have real expectations. Like if your family is at all predictable, take advantage of that predictability.
Yeah.
I found one thing that was great for me is as I was finding my way through things like Thanksgiving was when we were in grad school, we lived in quite a group. So after Thanksgiving, our respective families would send us back with a bunch of leftovers, and this inadvertently give rise to our Friendsgiving, which I think a lot of people do at this point. Like we fell into it, but I think this has been a thing for a little while. And I feel like that can be a really great way of sort of extending the sort of idea of Thanksgiving and being thankful to those people in your life who, you know, aren't part of your family, but are still valuable, as well as a really great way to make sure that those leftovers get spread around and used before they go bad, because that's important too, people.
And you remember when we were living together, I'd bring back my family's leftovers and we would eat like kings and queens for a few days. It was a great time.
Jacob, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that for regarding leftovers, everyone needs that one family member who just. In my case, I am that family member. Usually people will give a lot of food to me to like shove it off because they know that I'll within a matter of a few days eat it before it goes bad.
I was definitely that person in my family, and you know, calories have consequences, people. So like I'm at a point now where I'm like, no, I've done my time. I mean, you need to give part of this to somebody else. I won't bear this burden. It's too much. I hate wasting food too, and that makes it like so much harder. I want to mention something else. So anything else we want to cover in Thanksgiving and food while we're here?
I do kind of want to move to the. Oh, sorry.
For me, Thanksgiving is the one that has changed like a lot, and one of the things I've sort of been practicing is the whole Friendsgiving thing, where we at least have a meal of sorts and we'd invite friends. This is the first Thanksgiving because we recently moved to a new city. It was just me and my partner, and we ordered food somewhere. We ordered takeout. They were doing like a restaurant doing like a Thanksgiving special pickup order thing, and we decided to do that, and that was nice. It was, you know, super easy, non-complicated. But I am wondering, as we kind of go on, family members aren't nearby, and they don't care about Thanksgiving all that much, fully enough. I feel like how do we kind of build up friendships good enough to have them over for Thanksgiving. I feel like that's something we're kind of probably have to work on in the next coming years, maybe.
Yeah, our friend group came together in a very strange way after like very, very odd circumstances. And I think that, for a lot of people, and I've definitely been here for a lot of these holidays, like I haven't necessarily been alone, but boy, howdy, did I feel alone. And, that's hard and real. And I feel like that can happen anywhere where, you actually care about something enough to have a tradition to get together with people, to open up to your friends or whatever that case is. That struggling with these holidays often means, struggling with loneliness in some real ways. And that's a common struggle, even if we don't talk about it commonly.
I think part of it, and you just addressed, is for some people that I've met that have dealt with over the years that have had issues like, I'm not really into Thanksgiving, I'm not into Christmas, I'm not into, like, name your holiday. And I was like, yeah, that's not really my thing. And they opt out of, not only say they opt out of participation, but they're like, no, it's not really my thing. But like you said, that loneliness kicks in, because even if you might not be into it, it still sucks to know that everybody else I know is together doing this thing, and I'm on the outside of it, whether it's self-imposed or not. And yeah, just opening yourself up to like the title suggests, surviving versus thriving, allowing for yourself to take part in those community and communal things. And again, reshaping what they mean to you outside of what it might have meant if you have negative associations with it from your past, and saying, I have agency over what this can feel like now. So for me, personal experience, when I first moved to Austin, my first year here was rough because I moved right before the holidays. I moved like in August, and I knew I made a decision. All right, I'm not gonna be able to make it back up for Thanksgiving this year. I might not be able to make it for Christmas, but I definitely want to make it back home for New Year's. Like I just financially, I knew I could pull that off, and that was 10 years ago. But in the interim time, I had started building my good friend circle, and those same people that I was cool with 10 years ago, I'm still cool with now. And we make a point, even though we have like families of our own and we might travel, we still do something together for Thanksgiving every year. Even if it's 2 weeks before that, we make sure that we have that specific time for the family that we've created for each other, to make sure like no one has that feeling of loneliness. Nobody feels like they're left out. Like, this is for us. We're doing this together. It's not even had to be built around turkey. Like, we're just getting together and eating something. We might just get a bunch of pizzas and watch a movie, but we want to make sure we make that time for one another. And I think a lot of people just kind of have to start focusing on that way. It's like, I'm doing something with the people I have chosen, as opposed to I'm forcing myself into interaction that isn't healthy for me. And I hope that more people can start to see it in that sort of light, and not have those moments of, crap, I'm left out, no one is allowing me in their reindeer game situation.
That's a great point about the sort of like healthiness factor of your holiday experience. Jacob, I want to tell you, I think we've got a little static on your line, or maybe your mic. Are you going through wind tunnel? I've got a little bit of static on your line, so watch out for that.
Maybe is it active right now?
It's very clear right now, so maybe.
Yeah.
Huh. Weird. Okay, I think there was a moment earlier where my connection like lessened, so maybe it was that. But
okay, it could be the void trying to take you.
Maybe it's Void Boy with his void.
Oh.
I do have a similar experience, but it relates to Christmas regarding this topic. So I'm not sure if I should hold out on it for a little bit longer, or
let's hold it for 1 sec, because I need to hit one historical note, and I think you and Castor Troy are the perfect people to help me. So I live in New England. So part of celebrating Thanksgiving in New England, at least I've noticed a little bit more and more, is acknowledging that we are the bad guys in the story. That like, I think there's a growing awareness that, our particular stories about Thanksgiving are not the whole picture, and that there's actually quite a lot of strife where people have tried in the past to paint a historical picture. I feel like this idea of a peaceful Thanksgiving, isn't it oh great that we got along, is fading. Castor Troy, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing culturally, or if maybe I'm just hanging out with some folks who are paying attention to this stuff. And Jacob, am I describing the situation okay? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I understand, and I think you are being accurate. There's a lot of things I would add to it.
As in the horror genre, in the history genre, New England is typically the bad guy. So I just want to give, as a New Englander, I feel it's my responsibility to give everyone a fair watch out for that.
Yeah. Now, I do, as a fellow. While I know I don't live in New England currently, but born and bred. That's where we met. It's a little bit of both in your case. Yes, you're hanging around, I guess, the right people that are kind of talk about that sort of thing and bring it up. But also, there's just been that cultural swing of just awareness and we actually talking about our history in a realistic way. Like you're seeing the same thing with Columbus Day and just other holidays that are very much steeped in the origins of this aren't as rosy as all the Disney movies have presented to us over the years. Let's start talking about the realness of it. And I've seen the cultural switch even here in Texas, where no matter how staunch you lean on one way or the other, people are acknowledging, oh yeah, Thanksgiving was kind of a propaganda machine. we watched the PR work behind that one. We can acknowledge how messed up it was for the Native Americans and everything. And that's where you start to see that cultural shift of, we might not like what this holiday was built on, but where it is, we've taken it back and we're making it something into that's our own. But yeah, you're definitely seeing the cultural shift of acknowledging how messed up the origins of Thanksgiving actually are.
To go anthropology mode here, I think it's an interesting topic to acknowledge the existence of American mythology over, because we don't usually class popular understandings of American history under the category of mythology, but this is often how it's seen by academics, right? There are certain tropes in how American history is told and how we perform it during holidays that are mytho-cultural in nature, right? And Thanksgiving is one of those things. The event that is supposedly the origin of Thanksgiving, and really probably isn't. It developed later out of general harvest practice, right? But the event that's attached to it is just a period of the first harvest of successful agriculture in Plymouth Colony. That event, if you take it down to the day itself, has very little negative baggage attached to it. The negative baggage is attached to how the story is told, which is that it relates to the successful English settlement of the region. And usually the narrative that we have brings in Native Americans as equal participants, which they were not. The Puritans viewed them very lowly, and Native people largely saw them as potential trading partners in these early days, where any aid to the colony was aid in the hopes that you could get guns and whatnot out of them, right? So I think it's just one of these things where the story we tell with Thanksgiving is the story of being thankful that we're in America, tied to these early settlers, and that comes with the fact that in later decades, not on that day by any means, but later decades, these same colonists and their descendants would carry out the complete extermination of several people groups that were involved, such as the Wampanoag, which Tisquantum, or Squanto as we remember him, came from. So yeah, I think the baggage is there, but I also think it's completely possible to celebrate Thanksgiving without attaching it to this story. There's even some debate if Thanksgiving comes from there at all, or if it comes from just harvest festivals that existed elsewhere in the colonial U.S. and it was just attached to that one as people increasingly saw Plymouth as a formative moment, right? The first Thanksgiving festival celebrated in a Christian context around a harvest season in North America was celebrated by the Spanish in the 1500s. And some people contend that may have been the first Thanksgiving in North America. So, I think it's totally possible and totally reasonable to celebrate the holiday, separating it from the historical background we traditionally attach it to. And it's somewhat better for it if we have that conversation.
I think. Sorry.
Go ahead, Void Boy.
Yeah, I like to see this more as I'm more like pragmatic when it comes to this. Like, maybe not the traditional Thanksgiving might not be celebrated, but the fact that it's like a national holiday and it's a day that people usually have it off. It's always a time to, be around people, be around families, and it's, probably the beginnings of winter, so things are, we're all going to be more indoors, so having those interactions are like, are valuable. For a Massachusetts, staying in Massachusetts and New England perspective, have been seeing a little bit of changes, at least on my neck of the woods, mostly in the Boston, Cambridge area. There has been more talks about instead of being thankful, there's more about being mindful instead, which is interesting. It's more about being more aware, more considerate of others, more giving, and it is sort of attached to like the tenets of Thanksgiving, but it's more about being more community focused and aware of other people's sensibilities and things that are going on. And I actually find that interesting. It still kind of very much happens around Thanksgiving, and I find it, maybe like the beginnings of some sort of maybe a change of tradition or like a change of how Thanksgiving is viewed. I still feel that people, they do stuff on the day of Thanksgiving. It's kind of interesting to see how it'll move further from its, unfortunate past.
Well, thanks for sharing that perspective. Jacob, did you want to get us started on Christmas? Because I know you had something before, but I don't want to put pressure on you.
So I was going to talk about a story of holiday loneliness. So the first time I lived in Israel, actually, I'm going to take a second to close my bedroom door because the dogs are very loudly and I don't want them to get caught on this. Just a sec.
I suspect the mic issue might be like your mic brushing against your shirt or something like that as you move.
Maybe.
But thanks for closing that door and protecting us all from that barking dog. So, all
right, door is properly closed. I'm back.
Okay. So, Jacob, you get us started, and then I have a perspective on holiday music that I'd love to hear your guys' view on. But you go first.
All right. So, when I first went to Israel and lived in Jerusalem, this was 2018. I went with a friend, a German friend, on Christmas Eve to Bethlehem, and it was great. If you've never been to Bethlehem, it is one of the largest cities in the West Bank, and it is a very fun place to go, very accessible compared to most areas of the West Bank. And it's you can tell it has a very seasonal tourist economy, right? So on Christmas Eve, it was just utterly packed. It was just full packed city. And we didn't have plans for the next day. We just hung out and saw everything going on and then got out of there before midnight, before all the traffic would go wild. We went back to Jerusalem. But the next day, I spent the first Christmas in my life alone. And it was a weird, surreal experience when you're just aware that every one of your family and friends back home is celebrating something. And you're just not. You're just in a place alone. I played Kerbal Space Program the entire day and didn't interact with anyone. But Yeah, I think it was the only time I've like cried over Christmas was this going from it is my favorite holiday, for sure. It is just the best time of year. Um, and when you kind of think about that the whole time and what is special to you, and then you replace it with something else dramatically overnight, and then find yourself separated from people, it hurts a lot. And so it hits very differently. Later Christmases there, I had a more robust friend circle. And so that ended up taking care of it. And I was not depressed for those. But this first one was probably one of the roughest holidays I'd had at that point in my life. And so, yeah, that's my similarity to the feelings of loneliness that come with being separated for Thanksgiving is it hurts a lot with Christmas too.
I'm blessed that I've never been allowed to be alone for a holiday. That someone would capture me and just not allow me to be alone, and that's probably been to my betterment. But yeah, I think it's hard, and I think people underestimate how hard it is until they're like, oh wait, yeah, this is quite the bummer. So sometimes that is still what people need, and I respect that. But I just want to warn folks, especially something like Christmas or something that mattered a lot before. It's easy to have emotional whiplash and not think it was going to happen until you're there. I've got something a little bit lighter on music, but I don't want to charge away if you guys have more on this.
Can I butt in real quick? So we have a live listener, Insomniac, who says if we're reading the chat to add something on their behalf, they say, the hardest holidays I've had was being on an antidepressant that made me more depressed while everyone else was downstairs enjoying the holidays.
That sounds really awful.
Like a hard experience. Yeah.
I had a time where I was taking a mental health medication, and it was relatively new, and there was a party happening, and I was like, I literally can't do this. It really sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a different world. I think it's different. There's two related but similar dynamics here. One where you feel out of something that's going on right at your doorstep, and one where you're feeling out of something that's going on a long distance away. And they have very much the same feeling, but the like causes are different. And I feel like if you're close with people and still feel left out, that's probably so much worse.
Much like in New England, I'm thinking Stephen King novels here. Loneliness is a dangerous foe. So, don't underestimate it. I want to talk about holiday music. I need to get something off my chest here. This has no relation to family whatsoever. This is strictly old man yells at media. I grew up in so much retail environment that Christmas music was just so overdone, and I got to a point where Christmas music set me off, turned me into a Scrooge, and made me want nothing to do with the holiday. And what really helped turn that around for me was Christmas lo-fi, especially like I'm thinking 2017 lo-fi that no one listened to. Like lo-fi that was genuinely like low quality, like all the lo-fi now is actually high quality music. And it often would have like quotes from Christmas music, movies added in. You can find them on YouTube. They have very low view counts, so sort by low view counts to find them. But it was nice because there was it had its own persistent beat. Lo-fi can be great in a lot of different ways. And throwing in an off-color quote from the Santa Claus or whatever, or Charlie Brown's Christmas or whatever, like reminds me, I don't hate that, but maybe I just don't want to watch that movie. Like that reference to it was enough for this year. Thank you. So I think that holiday music can be the villain in Christmas. It has been my nemesis in enjoying Christmas outside of family altercations. So I'm wondering what you guys interactions with music, and then I have specific questions about movies and Christmas.
Well, I will say I love Christmas music and holiday music in general. But I think it's because for actually a very similar reason to why you disliked it, because you hated it so much. I didn't start working retail until I was in my mid-20s, and I had to, worked at Best Buy and in one other retail space. But I also grew up with a very musically inclined family. Like my grandparents on my parents' side were like, on my dad's side were lounge singers. So it wasn't like we listened to the same stuffy Christmas music over and over again, which I find happens to be the reason why people say they don't like it. It's because they basically, there's like 12 actual Christmas songs and everybody's just remixing the same ones. But if you're listening to like the lo-fi, like you just said, the lo-fi cool remixes, or like in my case, the R&B and the funk versions of a lot of these Christmas songs, and then you get to the originals and it's not the same stuffy, have yourself. Like, yes, that's a great song, but if you hear it 100 times, you want to stab somebody. So I wasn't never in that environment until
it's been playing for like 80. Like these are not young songs. We dust off these same songs for the season, and like each year they stand out more and more against the cultural. I'm now at a point where I'm like, oh my god, this song is so old, and I can like enjoy the novelty of it again.
But I do think part of it is,
I'm not even like there are people far older than me that are like, yes, this song all year, all the time.
All the time, always. No, but I remember when I worked at Best Buy, we actively took back, because we had a boss that was like, oh, we're going to put, it's, after Thanksgiving, basically Black Friday is when they started, say, oh, we're going to start putting on the holiday music. And me and another guy were like, hey, let us control the holiday music. And we had like, at the time, it was like a Napster free when they were trying to compete with Spotify. And we made a playlist, but it was a few of the old standards, but we did like Trans-Siberian Orchestra and like Greg Clark Jr., like all like contemporary artists that were doing Christmas music. And you could see the shift even when people would walk in, they were like expecting to hear crappy holiday music. It's like, oh no, this is like a new version of this. And I like this. I don't hate Christmas music. And that's like, kind of like what I said before about Thanksgiving. If you can make it yours, if you can refocus it and not just take on the traditions that you've hated your entire life. It's like, no, what are the new trappings of this same thing? And
I love
hopefully that can make it work.
Pentatonix Christmas music. They improve every song they sing.
I was never really in touch with Christmas music. Actually, in Puerto Rico, when I was living in Puerto Rico most of my life, the music there's a little bit different. It's very traditional, and it's like inspired with African and salsa music, so it's very different, but it stays the same. And these songs are ancient. These are hundreds of year old songs. Like they still use some African words in them, so it's like that old. But then when I get so when I get like to US, and that's music does not exist, I have to I was introduced to those really old songs, like in the 50s and 30s and whatever. But my partner had a very interesting tradition. She loves NSYNC, and she plays the NSYNC Happy Holiday album. And it is the most, it's fun. It's very
It's playing in my head right now.
I hear every song on that album right now.
It's been like this is like the fourth year, and it's in my head. There's like lyrics that it's obviously it's surprisingly incredibly Christian. Like I think one of the band members, Joey Fatone, is very much puts the Christ back on Christmas. He was on record, and every time he talks about Christmas, he says, "I'm here to celebrate the birth of Jesus," straight into the camera. It's actually one of my favorite lines. And I remember one of the lyrics is like, "From a message from above, God gives you his love," something like that. It's very cheesy, and because it's in sync, so it's like it's very much like not sincere, but it grew on me, right? That's sort of music where like I would never in my life want to seek out NSYNC Christmas music, but over time it became like a fun little tradition, and it grew on me. Surprisingly, that was very unexpected. That was a little bit of a cultural.
Pentatonix definitely did it right, but I see where you're coming from there. But that has to be hard, being culturally cut off from something that is so unique and particular to that cultural place, and maybe even that time. Like, I imagine you can't search for those songs on the internet in any useful way because no one's trying to make money off of them.
Oh yeah, you can. They're so old that like I think you can find.
Okay, so they're out there somewhere, but
yeah, they're out
they're
there.
not going to come on at Walmart or while you're listening to the radio, just getting your vibe on.
No. I mean, some of them are actually kind of not possible, or like, well, kind of, but because they're so old, there's a tradition of improvisation. So some songs are actually improvised on the spot.
Oh, okay.
As they're being played. Yeah, because I think it comes from that old tradition of like, being around people and singing it. And this comes back when it wasn't music wasn't commercialized. So it was cool to just make stuff up. Because the point is just to sing. And that is what I don't think I'll ever get it. I'll have to be there in Puerto Rico when it's happening for me to get that experience again.
Well, that's rough, but when and if you're there, you'll appreciate that tradition for having been separated from it. Not to say you must be separated from a tradition to appreciate it, but I know for myself. Well. Anyway, I don't want to say too much too soon. Anyone want to say anything further on holiday or Christmas music before we move into Christmas movies? Again, I'm taking the silence as agreement.
I'll say one thing, that the Adeste Fideles goes far harder in Latin than Come All You Faithful does in English. And every single time that song comes on, I am for the singing of the Latin version. That is it.
You have a very good point. Many of the old hymns are worthy of singing in Latin. And as someone who got a cum dignitate, which means with dignity, and I'll take any shred of dignity I can get on my national Latin exam, check them out. They go hard, and you actually know what they mean if you're familiar with the original, song in English. So, wow, you know Latin now. Enjoy your dead language. As someone who studied Latin for 3 years, I learned more history than anything else. Okay, so I want to talk about movies. I had this point like in the middle. Like, obviously now I have my own daughter. I'm married. I can make of Christmas whatever I want to for the most part. But there was a time where I felt like Christmas was happening. I was on the outside looking in. Great people around me were doing all the right things to help me feel a part of the family and a part of the tradition. But I just couldn't get there. Like, I'd go to church still and like I enjoyed church and I enjoyed the music at church, but like I wasn't coming away joyful. So, I just want to acknowledge that's life sometimes. Sometimes you can't carry the joy of the season and you're allowed to not do that. But something that really helped me, and this was really unique, I think it was Spike TV, which isn't even a TV channel now, and you can argue if it was a TV channel then. But they were playing Star Wars, and one of the things I really liked was Empire Strikes Back because it's got snow and war, and the Skywalker family at the middle of it is like the most dysfunctional family in the galaxy. Like, there's a point where like, oh, we're gonna have dinner, and it's Darth Vader, and he immediately shoots him, and I'm like, family dinners, am I right?
They really played Star Wars like all the time on there, didn't they? Because I remember that just being on all the time when someone.
If you had the rights to it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, true.
So like, but that like, I enjoyed all Star Wars, but Empire Strikes Back was like, nope, this is a movie about family strife, and that helps me feel better. Then when I got a little older, under Castor Troy's tutelage, I realized that no matter what anyone tells you, Die Hard is an amazing Christmas Eve movie to watch on Christmas Eve. And that has been, every night we do our holiday, routine, put the little one to sleep, and then turn on Die Hard, because that's been really great. And it's one of those, people will debate, is it a Christmas movie? Did they make it a Christmas movie? So, I'm going to cast a Troy because I appreciate so much. But that little thing has helped my Christmas Eves become so great. Like, if I can find a good church to go to, great. Come home, put the kid to sleep, and then hit hit some Die Hard.
It makes me so happy that you have made that a tradition for your family. It makes me happy I was part of that. But also, you can vouch, I was a part of
Not the
Die
little
Hard
one.
as a Christian.
She's not ready for Die Hard yet. One day I hope she can enjoy Die Hard with us, but that is going to be a while.
Yeah, it's going to be a few years. But no, but you can also vouch, I was early on the Die Hard as a Christmas movie thing because I have not even internet stuff. My family and I would watch Die Hard every year when I was a kid. We love the schmaltzy, like Hallmark, Lifetime holiday movies too, just because those are just fun to watch and ridiculous on their own right. But no, we would like that. My family, we were cinephiles. We like all movies, but we also wanted to like kind of step out and not watch the same schmaltzy stuff every year. And I remember one year, it was my grandmother just randomly put on Die Hard. She's like, "Yeah, they got Christmas stuff in this," and so we watched that. We will watch Lethal Weapon, and then as years went on, we will watch stuff like The Long Kiss Goodnight and Batman Returns, and just anything that had Christmas in it. It's like that works for us. We'll make it happen. And some of them we're stretching with it, but other ones it is, they're still Christmas movies, and the value, like I tell people all the time, Die Hard and Home Alone are essentially the same movie. And if you think Home Alone's a Christmas movie, then Die Hard is a Christmas movie because it's just two people trying to reunite with their families through violence. And you know what? We're American. Sometimes we're okay with that sort
of thing. Maybe a little too sometimes we're okay with that sort of thing.
Too much, but yeah.
But I will say, it's one thing to watch him go up against Hans Gruber, and it's another thing to see the McAllister boy hit the Wet Bandits where it hurts. Both good movies for very different audiences. What do you guys think, Void Boy and Jacob? Have movies been a part of your Christmas experience? Do they help? Do they get in the way? Are you watching the dregs? I know there's a Hallmark movie called A Christmas Movie Christmas, where it's a Christmas movie inside of a Christmas movie. I'm not even making that up. I wish I was. What do you guys think?
When I was younger, I watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer like all the time. We had it on VHS, and it was definitely one of the large elements of Christmas season. Today, not so much. As a family, we usually try to watch a Christmas movie, and we usually don't like them. Usually what ends up happening is we find that the family dislikes them. I don't particularly see it as that necessary, but I do, as someone who just likes Christmas and environment, I do enjoy when someone asks me to, and I'm usually the one who likes the bad movie, not because of any quality of it, but because I enjoyed sitting there under some blankets and staring at another Santa Deus Ex Machina happening to resolve the end of it. So yeah, I tend to engage in it, but I guess it's not that important to me. Sometimes it's just like the South Park Christmas specials or whatever that there's a billion of.
I know for me now, it's a huge deal. I've always it's a huge part of that this season for me is to watch a bunch of like Christmas and holiday movies, but especially since I moved to Texas, because other than in February, every other February when we freeze and the entire state shuts down, it doesn't look like Christmas down here, at least being a New Englander, what I'm used to. We don't get the snow. We don't get like that change that makes it like feel like, oh yeah, that crispness in the air. If Christmas is around the corner, like it's 70 degrees right now. It'll probably be 75 on Christmas Day. That's just how the weather down here is. So watching those movies now is what kind of helps keep me in the mood and keeps me in that festive feeling, because otherwise I'm not going to get it. It's going to be another 75-degree day with people walking around in shorts. So I need those movies to help me dial into Christmas season. It really helps.
I always wonder what the effect. I always wonder what the effect people in Australia feel with all of the Christmas media in existence featuring snow and the like, while they're enjoying midsummer,
straight up summer where they are.
Yeah.
Living in Puerto Rico, it's actually interesting. What makes me feel like it's Christmas is just the lights. Having a lot of Christmas lights with just nice 70, 60-degree weather, it gives me like that. The Christmas is here. Also the food.
I love dim lights. I don't care what time of year it is. You got good lights. I'm going to like those lights. I'm easy to please.
People want to leave their Christmas lights up all the time. Like it's literally just decoration around the city. So it's not even they just switch to different lights around Christmas time. But otherwise, they're just always up.
They're always up. Recently, for me, the Christmas movies have been a recent tradition. And I think we really been sticking to it. We're really good for it. We have specific movies that we must watch. We have a list of these are the must watch during the month of December. We're pretty big. Klaus is an animated one. A couple of Disney or like animated Christmas movies. Like it's not Disney, but like we love The Grinch. We love Grandma Governed Over by a Reindeer. The little Rudolph and the what's it called? A Year Without Santa Claus. Is kind of that theme of stop motion. And we have some cult, like really obscure movies that we love that are really bad, but we just love. This one that's called 3 Days. I recommend you watch it. It's about this angel, literal angel from God that comes in and kind of stop this man from, not being in the spirit, and he kind of takes him back in time. It's really weird, Hallmarky movie, but we just love how corny it is. There's another one called Jingle All the Way that's also with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we love Home Alone 2. Once we go visit, the movie stuff becomes like a schism. There's one side of the family that loves Christmas, National Lampoon, Christmas Vacation, and then the other side of the family loves Home Alone 2. So we have to watch both of them every year. It's almost like a mandatory, but it's always who gets to watch it first, kind of the thing that happens every year. But yeah, I've been enjoying watching these movies. Once the season stuff, I always look forward to them. We even make lists and we start ranking them, and the rankings change every year.
See, that's the type of stuff that I can get behind. I love stuff like that. Also, You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch is one of the greatest diss tracks in music history because he hated that dude. Like that. Oh, man. Great song.
It's good. If you want a really unique Christmas movie that I fully recommend, there's a French movie called Joyeux Noël, which is about the Christmas truce of 1914 in World War I. And it follows British, French, and German soldiers around Christmas in the trenches, like befriending each other or coming out of the trenches to befriend each other on Christmas. And it is really, really good. 100% recommend. Underrated Christmas movie.
And then right after that, for a total shift, go watch a Christmas Prince. For
yeah.
Oh, Mark, I will never diss any Hallmark style movie. It's always like fun. Also, like what's the other one? Love Actually, which is a Christmas movie, but half the cast cheats on each other.
Oh yeah, that movie is a wild ride. Also references the Lewinsky scandal. So
yes, it's a very like weird and like how is this supposed to make me the tone? I'm supposed to feel happy. I'm supposed to feel good, and it's like no, all these people are weird and they're like awful to each other.
Like I enjoy Love Actually. I have friends that have convinced me that to like it more than I used to. But it's a bunch of terrible people trying to find love with one another, and like it doesn't pass any more than 2 like passes of thought. Like you just take the emotion as they give it to you that first time. Great movie. The second you start to think of any of the actual motivations behind anything that people are doing, it's all bad. So just accept the Christmas spirit and all I want for Christmas is you and the kid running through the airport and just leave it at that. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. I put it off long enough. This is going to be, I think, wrap up on Christmas because, as always, Christmas can take over everything. We know that's what it wants. Gifts. And I have to say that gifts for me have been a point of stress. So much so that I still remember the year Castor gave me a New Super Mario Brothers game, and I still feel guilty because I didn't get him crap. So So like the whole gift exchange, and it's never something I've been good at, and I always feel horrible and I carry guilt because many of the people around me are really great gifters, and they humble me to a point of paralysis, perhaps. So I'm curious about Void Boy. Where I imagine if holidays themselves weren't really allowed when you were growing up, that gifts were they rare? Did you guys just give gifts for regular? Is this a place where you have cultural whiplash, or is it like, no, gifts are easy for everyone except Broclen? He's the only one having a problem here.
No, I agree with you. I'm in the same boat in terms of struggling with giving gifts. It's still been like, there shouldn't be an excuse for me because, I've been practicing at least, 5 times already. But it never gets easy. It's just always like a stress of knowing exactly what they want. Luckily for me, I only have like very small amount of people. I'm sort of required to give gifts, right? Like to avoid any awkward situations or expectations. I'm thankful that usually my partner kind of already knows what everyone wants and has like a good strategy. Over the years, I sort of started thinking about more not expensive things, but things that I know they'll like based on vague stuff. And it's usually never expensive. I try not to go over like $20, but I do try to keep it as personable as possible. And something that I know they'll look at it and be like, oh, this is cute. But it's still like hard. From never giving presents to anybody on Christmas Day to suddenly you have like a list of people that you have to like give something. Just not to look horrible. It is very much an adjustment. But I don't know. Every year is this stress, but then at the end it kind of works out. So fingers crossed for this year.
And that's, I guess, my approach to it. I have always been wary of the obligation of gift giving. That's why, again, like I said about the way I grew up, like my immediate family, me and my mom, like not a lot of money to go around. So I would get like a big gift and maybe a smaller gift just from her, and they'd get like everybody calls out, like it was usually like a video game console. And I remember when I got my PS2 for Christmas, so I was around 14, and that was in the era where like they didn't pack in games with the consoles anymore. And my mom didn't realize that. So I got a PS2. It's like, hey, Merry Christmas. You got a PlayStation. And I didn't have any video games for like a week and a half because she didn't get paid again until after New Year's. So I got some Christmas money. Yeah.
The parents that got their kids games didn't realize those kids also needed memory cards. So you were not suffering alone. That was a hard time to be a gamer.
I didn't have a game or memory card. And so like I like that distinctly remember. I was like, all right, cool. I have to use my Christmas money. And I took the bus up to the mall and I got 2 pre-owned games and a memory card. And I was like, all right, cool. But my mom didn't get me any actual video games for like a couple of weeks. And I always just remember her stress of that obligation of making sure she had to get me something. And I get it as a parent to the child, you want to give them something for Christmas. But it was like, why do I put that stress on myself as a friend? Like my friends know we're all dirt freaking poor. Why are we expecting each other to give each other lavish gifts? So when Broclen brings up the year where I gifted everybody in the house like a bunch of stuff, that was just because I was in a position to do that. I was working at Best Buy, I got a super big discount on a bunch of stuff, and I was like, and I also my gift giving is very much it's based on the person, not on the value of the gift. And like you were saying, like, oh, I saw something that made me think of this other person. Let me write that down and make a note of it. And the best gifts I've ever gotten from
people. You were correct. I have never met a 2D Mario game that I did not like.
Exactly.
So, like, you knocked it out of the park as well. So,
I'd also say, like, one of the best
appreciate that one.
One of the best gifts I've ever gotten, and it wasn't on Christmas. You got it for my birthday. Was that blue fleece blanket you just gave me? I still have that blanket. It's like a comfort blanket for me. One of the best gifts I ever got from another friend for Christmas down here is just like a Fast and Furious like beer mug. And I just love those ridiculous movies. I don't even drink beer that much, but it's the thought of something from people. And that's how I try to give it. Like whether the gift is $5 or $100, It's about the person I'm giving it to, not the obligation to give a gift. And I'm also just okay with people being upset if they didn't get something from me every now and again, because that we're human and sometimes I might not be able to afford it, or just I'm not around. But I try not to lead with the obligation of, oh man, I have to get these people something. So no, I want to give these people something because they mean something to me. And that usually takes some of the stress away in that whole situation.
That feels like the right vibe. I'll try to. I'll work on that. I'll work on myself.
It takes time, man. It takes time.
All right. So if there's no objection, we're ready to move away from Christmas. Don't worry. Well, plenty of people will be talking about it still. But I want to go to New Year's, and I want to ask this question: is New Year's an actual holiday, or is it just like a ritual? Like if you watch, so this is something we do. Our daughter isn't going to stay up till midnight. That's not going to be good news for anybody. So we watch Sydney, Australia's fireworks, which is, great. They come first. So like enjoying different parts of the world and how they celebrate New Year's is really cool. But is it a unified holiday that we're all celebrating? Or are we all just like celebrating that we survived the year and hoping the next one is better? And it just, has this kind of ritualistic vibe. What do we think on this?
Well, it's more of a holiday than like most of the little stock political holidays on the calendar. So like, I don't know. I consider it pretty big. If you're weighing the averages here.
Yeah, I also consider it like a holiday. It is an event. I mean, it is. We're moving from one year to the other, and it is something that we all kind of ritualistically get together and shoot fireworks in the air. To end.
It's not just America this time. Usually, it's just us shooting fireworks into the air.
Exactly, it's the whole world, baby, and it varies from culture to culture. Obviously, in America, we got the ball's coming down. And other places have their own thing. Yeah, I think it counts as a holiday.
I would absolutely count it as a holiday, and I also count it, like you've all just alluded to, like one of the few universal holidays. Every culture has some version of the calendar is changing over. We're acknowledging whether it's in a cleansing ritual, whether it's in a turnover ritual, resolutions. There's just an acknowledgement of we are transitioning from one year to the next, and that means something. And then on a more micro level, like, that's again another holiday where the pretense is the party. Like there's people can make too much of it. It's like, oh, I gotta get dressed up and go out to this other place. Or it's like, hey, let's once again get together the people I'm cool with, that I care about, that I want to spend this type of time with, and do that. I think the problem with New Year's is just because we're all getting old. The pretense of, oh man, I gotta stay up till midnight for this. I'm tapping out by 9:30 in most days now. But if you can also just switch over, it's like, okay, I'll spend New Year's Day with these people as opposed to waiting for the fireworks. And we got the technology. You can throw the fireworks on whenever you want to and just have a little countdown. Or I've been liking lately how people go, hey, if you turn on this movie at 8:53 at exactly midnight, like Tony Stark will say, I am Iron Man or something like that. Like, I love those little rituals that people come up with to celebrate.
Those are good memes. I see those. Yeah. If you watch at this time, Obi-Wan Kenobi will say hello there at the beginning of the new year.
See? Like, I love stuff like that.
I sort of agree with the whole, going to sleep at 10 p.m. on New Year's Day because or New Year's Eve. It's because it's sort of weird to stay up that long. Even if you have, like, most people have work tomorrow, so it's like, well, whatever. It is fun though. Early on, I sort of miss some traditions that are no longer a thing anymore. A weird tradition that I love is Anderson Cooper and the guy who I don't know, one of the producers of Housewives of New York always get wasted on New Year's Eve, and they do it live on camera. It is incredibly funny. And they stopped doing that because they get wasted live on camera. They can say deranged things.
But it was
I think this has happened in multiple places.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was one of the best things of, like, New Year's Eve. Sort of like the content, what you watch on TV sort of changes a little bit. And people make up their own little traditions. I don't really do anything much on New Year's Eve, especially now. I'm kind of like in a new city. I don't know anyone. and it's not a big loss or, not a big emotional moment for me. I know earlier we had the story about being alone for Christmas and how difficult that is. But being alone for New Year's Eve is kind of like, nah, I'm just gonna go to sleep. Bye. It's not a big holiday in my calendar.
All right, I have two myths that I want to dispel about New Year's. The first is that it's a couple's holiday. Don't. If you're a couple, yeah, enjoy it like you enjoy anything else as a couple. But don't put that pressure on you. Don't put that pressure on other people. If you're a couple, enjoy. If you're not a couple, don't stress on that. Don't make that. Don't take that stress and that problem into the new year. I feel like that's rough. The other thing I want to tell everyone is the ball dropping may look cool, but no one in New York City there that you see on TV is having a good time, except the person who's being paid to be drunk on air. So I don't want people looking at New York City saying, oh, man, that must be. It's not. I've heard stories out of New York City. They are not far away from us in New England, and it is not a good time to be. Oh, all right. Well, maybe you want to prove me wrong, Jacob, but I have heard it is awful the closer you are to the action.
I was with my ex. It was not my ex yet. And we actually timed it. We were not at Times Square. That would have been a nightmare. But we timed it so that we'd be crossing the ferry on the river. And we could watch the fireworks go off from the ferry. So if you're a little ways out,
about the people you see on TV,
a little ways out from Times Square, the Times Square party puts on a good show for you.
It does, but they're cold, they're tired, they're constantly being told to applaud every time they come back from commercial break and everything. They don't know where their next meal's coming from. They don't know where their next bathroom break is coming from. It's tough out there, people. So if you're going to go to New York, and especially be at Times Square for the ball dropping, you need to take a survivalist attitude, my friend. Do not go underprepared. Be safe out there. It's rough.
You're essentially held hostage for MSNBC for the next 8 or 10 hours. I don't really envy anyone who's there in Times Square.
All right. Well, if we've covered New Year's, if there's anything else, stop me. But birthdays is next on my list, and I want to go to Void Boy first because I'm pretty sure those were on the disallowed list as well, right?
Very much so. That is a big one.
Jehovah's Witnesses are not down with birthdays. I don't know the theological reasoning, but I'm guessing that's not really the experience of the holiday regardless. The theology of the holiday is not necessarily the experience of
we can get into that if you want a little bit.
Well, I feel like the birthday is so personal. So I'm just wondering from a faith perspective how you feel about how you were disallowed to celebrate your own personal birthday. Does that feel different from the other holidays, or is it just another holiday you weren't celebrating at that point in your life?
It does. And I think what helped me sort of cope is that it happened early. It was a little bit awkward and weird to sort of cut it cold turkey. And the reasoning, sort of the theological reasoning, right? Kind of use the Bible to rationalize most of their practices, is that not a lot of good things happened with birthdays in the Bible. Some of the stories is some people got decapitated. Somebody's birthday wish was that they wanted someone dead for their birthday, and that's kind of one reason why. And then they look into the pagan origins of birthdays. It's some rationalizations. I really didn't put too much stock in it, and going through my life without celebrating birthdays, I sort of not looked forward to it. I always accepted, okay, I am this year older. I had to remind myself every day of my birthday how old I am. That kind of helped. That was the only tradition I did. And I tried to kind of treat it as a personal day off, PTO, personal time off, and I would just do, whatever I wanted that day. The only thing was I just didn't do anything particular, like no cakes, none of the candles, none of the fixings, no presents. However, family members would give me things at odd days. So as the day approaches, my grandma would be like, I know you don't celebrate birthdays, but I'm giving it to you because you are my grandson. And because I love you very much, I can give you a present for whatever occasion. And that was sort of accepted. And then my family didn't have a problem with that either. They were kind of like, okay, fine, you can give him something, just so don't specifically do all of the birthday tradition, the singing and the giving cards and stuff. That wasn't allowed. Now, as I'm older, the birthday means something very different for me. It's almost like my own personal emancipation from that tradition. I'm more like kind of remembering every year I celebrate my birthday now. It's like a year I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness. So it kind of, it means something totally different for me than for most people. I'm sure XJWs can sort of understand how that feels, the feeling of I'm no longer there anymore. So this sort of, the birthday is recontextualized for us. So yeah, I'd say it's
really
different.
Interesting. I hadn't considered that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, those are kind of my initial thoughts on birthdays. Nowadays, birthdays are pretty chill. It's still like a personal time off. It's still a day where I can just do whatever I want. But now I get a cake and some presents.
Nice. I think my problem with birthdays comes back around to gifts that I know I'm not good at giving them. So when someone gives me an awesome gift, I'm like, geez. But like, I'm afraid I'm not being appreciative enough when I receive a gift. So obviously I have a lot of gift phobias regardless of my holiday experience. So that's, that's always my stress point, is trying to make sure I say thank you right, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I need to just do thank you cards if this is bothering me so much. Any other notes on birthdays before we move into some of the lesser talked about holidays?
I will say that when a family member moves away, their birthday changes a little. My sister has a birthday in 2 days, and I am not necessarily in a hurry to find her a present because now she lives out of town working as a nurse elsewhere. And so next I see her, her birthday will pass, but she won't know that the shopping has merged in with my Christmas shopping and will take place after her birthday.
I feel like that's fine. I actually like that's like a time release, like that your birthday maybe shouldn't be one day. I don't know. Maybe that reduces the stress. If I don't receive all the gifts at once, then maybe it's easier for me to focus on how much I appreciate each individual gift. All right. So I want to move on to Valentine's Day, if that's okay. And I'm going to throw something out there that there's a problem with St. Valentine's Day that people overfixate on it. And I think there's a lot of people who make money off of folks overfixating on it. So that's part of my thought on Valentine's Day, is not to make too much of a thing of it. Also, if you're not in a couple, treat yourself. Like, I feel like then that should be a day for you to take care of you, for you to lock in on, your own needs and do whatever it is, is gonna lift you up. So I don't know how you all have approached Valentine's. I've spent some time single. Obviously I'm married, so we frequently celebrate Valentine's Day on a different day, because it rarely is. We'll just pick a day and have a date night instead. So that's usually how we approach it. I don't know if you guys have anything further to add. I'm getting a little preachy here, so I'm going to step back.
To add to the 4 singles, there is another option, which is take a risk, homie. Go for it. Ask them out. There we go.
Shoot your shot. No,
That's all the ones you don't take.
Yeah, Wayne Gretzky.
If you got a shot, sure. Yeah, if you got a shot, take that shot. I don't want to tell anyone not to take that shot. That would be terrible.
And if you're not shooting for the stars, you're missing.
You're missing exactly. Now, I do look at Valentine's as a just base level. It is a couples holiday, is a romantic couples holiday. Like that's just my immediate out view on it. I do like that when people are like, "Hey, let's just," it's a celebration of love in general, and like again, loving your friends, whoever it might be. I do, but a huge part of Valentine's Day is the FOMO. Like everybody that says, "Oh, I hate Valentine's Day because it's commercial and it's all this and it's all that," it's usually just because that person is not in a romantic relationship, and that is the prism through which they are viewing it, and that's why you get all those counter Valentine's Day. Like, no, we're celebrating against Valentine's Day by doing all the Valentine's Day stuff and continually acknowledging it. It's like either you don't care about it and you can just ignore it. Like when I'm not in a relationship and Valentine's Day rolls around, I'm just excited to get half price candy the next day. Like I can live without the holiday as it is. But if I'm in a relationship with someone, like, yeah, that becomes a day that of importance at that point, because that's what, again, through my prism, that's what that day is for. I'm celebrating the person I'm in a couple with. Let's do something together. Even like you just said, Broclen, even if we can't do it on the day, like let's just try to acknowledge that couple's relationship holiday.
It is hard getting a spot in a restaurant on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. It's
so
like
don't underestimate that, people.
Idea.
Yeah.
That's what drive-thrus are for. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm a cheap date, Jacob. You can take me to a drive-through anytime.
And I feel like I've been kind of been my running theme throughout this entire thing. Celebrate the holiday for you. Do not celebrate it for what other people are doing. Do not try to compare what you're doing to other people's version of that day. If your version of a good Valentine's Day, and again, if you're in a couple, if your good version of a Valentine's Day is you two cuddled up watching the same movie again, you just might order a heart-shaped pizza instead of a regular one, boom, that's your Valentine's Day. Like that, just celebrate it for you. The comparison is the thief of joy. And I think so much of what brings Valentine's Day down for people is they're comparing it to what others are doing instead of just making it what they want it to be. And like I've been saying that for every holiday, but specifically for Valentine's Day, make it your thing and you will enjoy it so much more than if you're constantly comparing it to what you think everybody else is trying to do, which is why everybody's trying to book reservations at the same restaurant on the same freaking day, and they're all miserable about it.
I know Cheesecake Factory on Valentine's Day seems like a good idea, but this is not an original idea, and you will face competition.
And you know what Troy learned to do? Troy learned to make cheesecake so he doesn't have to deal with that, and people love it. So boom.
The superpower. That's got to help with Thanksgiving too, when you can actually bring something. I need to learn to cook again. I used to cook a lot when I was younger, and if I go more than 2 weeks without cooking, I forget how and have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I was a lot better when I was living in Israel, and I moved back home. And when my mom's cooking is once again available, my skill disappears.
Whoops. One thing I kind of want to add to holidays, and this is kind of not just Valentine's Day specific, but other holidays as well. I noticed that specifically with my partner, TikTok has been sort of the tastemaker of new holiday traditions or trends, especially with gift giving. So during Halloween, I know we talked about Halloween last episode, but in Halloween they had this thing called Boo Baskets, and in Christmas they're kind of doing the same thing, and in Valentine's Day there was like a thing that you would give to your partner on that specific day. Like the consumerism is like pretty intense, but I sometimes notice that she would send me these TikToks of these little things that people do during the holidays, like these little trends of, oh, give your partner a bagoo or whatever. And I always fall for it every single time because I want to, make my partner happy and do these little things for them. But it is kind of weird how these little TikTok is kind of infiltrating every single holiday, and you have to, even in Valentine's Day, you have to do something that they add like an extra thing you also have to do. I don't know. That was sort of like my experience this year.
This sounds similar to a tradition I've heard of in Japan where gifts are sort of prepared in a group and then packaged together. But my understanding is, well, that's about it. So next one. No, go ahead.
I was going to say this is the cynic in me, but it's also the realist side of it. almost every holiday that is based around gift giving, that was literally a marketing thing. I think we, especially this audience, knows obviously the gifts given to Christ when with the three wise men, et cetera, for Christmas. But if you think about Valentine's Day, if you even think about the diamond ring you give for engagement, that was all just marketing. Literally, like the beers like Diamond Mine, they were like, oh, how do we get people to buy diamonds? Oh, tell them they have to when they get married, like, and tell them the price of it has to be X amount more than your paycheck. Like, all that stuff was made up, and then people just ran with it. It has no bearing on any sort of tradition or fact. It just kind of was thrown out there. And now, like you just said, to the point of TikTok, like, there's always this new thing. Yeah, that's just somebody trying to sell you something. And those things catch on, and now they just become a part of the lexicon. But it's all BS, for lack of a better term. And whether or not you feed into or not, it's like, if you're okay with the FOMO, say, I'm okay missing out on whatever this trend is.
That feeds into my point.
It's so distressing that engagement rings and Rhodesia have the same backstory, but like, yeah, that consumerism thing is huge around the holidays, and it's very easy to fall into because the social pressure, if you don't, is that you aren't keeping up with the others who are doing it.
So the one thing I want to say about consumerism is, and this is my only note on St. Patrick's Day, is that St. Patrick's Day is a day to, yes, celebrate Irish heritage, and you should definitely do that. But also a lot of companies just want to sell you a lot of alcohol because they know people are drinking more than usual on that day, especially near those parades. So there's a consumerist component here as well. And I love St. Patrick's Day. I love my corned beef and cabbage. My grandfather was an Irish cop. His dad was an Irish cop. So I'm not saying I don't like St. Patrick's Day, and I'm a firm believer that everyone's Irish. So if you're going to be Irish for a day, go easy on the drinks. You can always say, I think I'm going to have another, but you can never say, I think I want to have that last one. So that's the extent of my St. Paddy's Day advice. Be Irish, have fun, but don't overdo it. And maybe everything that's green isn't good to eat. So think about that too.
I will also say that and this isn't specific to St. Patrick's Day, but just any sort of holiday built around binge drinking at all. Keep in mind, alcohol is a product that is so bad for you that you've never actually seen anybody use it in a commercial for the product. If you are younger than 40 years old, you've never seen anybody drinking a beer commercial because it's not legal. So think of that for a second before you go out there and start pounding the back.
No, wait, no way.
Just blew your mind, didn't I? Yep.
So it's not like drinking empty cans? Is that
No, that's
no.
It's not that,
You can watch them not put it to their mouth.
Yeah,
the camera cuts away.
Oh my god, it's true. Oh, wow. Okay, you're blowing my mind. I have to look into that later, but that's
football's on all day tomorrow. Every alcohol commercial you see, you'll see them holding it, you'll see them smiling and celebrating, like, yeah, we've had great drinks.
The can turning an empty space.
You will never see them actually take a sip of any alcoholic beverage in any commercial.
Often the close-up of the can is being held by the person to suggest they're putting it down after they had just chugged it.
Wow, that's okay. I feel like I've been lied to this whole time. I mean,
Welcome to America. Sorry, buddy.
Well, like, I've been sober for like almost like a year now, so I cut alcohol from my life because, yeah, I agree, it's not great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But that was like, I guess that's how good the commercial was. It was like, exactly. Yeah, you drink it, of course. Wow. I
mean, Budweiser has like the most famous commercial in like U.S. history. So, and it doesn't even feature the alcohol product at all because it worked off of a national tragedy, right? So there's clever ways to put these commercials in there without invoking
the product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the feeling, or like, I don't know, put the mountains or the horses, or like, look at the Guinness change color.
Well, I mean, at this point now we're just talking my marketing background. Every commercial you see for anything doesn't sell you the product; it sells you the feeling that they want you to think associate with the product. So that's why every alcohol commercial shows people partying but not actually drinking. Every cologne commercial shows somebody just being sexy in the wilderness, but you clearly can't smell cologne through the screen. Like every ad is that.
Every aphrodisiac shows people like throwing frisbees for some reason.
Well, so this brings me to my point about Easter, that I love Easter. Yes, because I'm a minister, I'm a religious guy, I paid money to go to seminary school. So, like, obviously I'm going to be into Easter. I'm the target demographic. But it seems mostly free. It's the opposite of Christmas. There seems to be so much less consumerism. Yeah, there's going to be some peeps and candy up in your face. But I feel like some people just don't acknowledge it at all. And like that's been cool for me because I feel like I've been able to claim the holiday and make of it what I want to. So I'm curious to know if anyone in your life is celebrating Easter or if I'm really just the only one out here, because other than the peeps and the candy on the shelves for the little kids, I feel like once everyone's past, searching for eggs and candy, that I don't know that much is being done with the holiday. So I'd be curious to know what you guys are seeing.
I don't know. I see people like go to church or never do on Easter, and I see like
that's legit.
Anyone who's anywhere near kids. Like you mentioned, those Easter celebrations for kids with the egg hunts and stuff, that is a large scale event that happens in a lot of places.
Ours is put on by our town, and it's like not near Easter, but like it is like obviously we're engaging in the spirit of it. I also always, and I have no clue, like I may really be in the minority here. I go to outdoor sunrise services on Easter, usually in a place where you can see the sunrise either over like an orchard or a valley or a river or something like that. So that's great. It's usually a half-hour service because everyone's freezing. But like that part, like, so I wake up, I do the sunrise service, and then we have some kind of breakfast or brunch. And like, that's it. Like we did what, like the sort of ritualistic part of the holiday. We did the church, we had the family meal, and then the rest of the day is whatever you want to make of it. So like that's how I've approached it. So I don't know if that's just how I'm doing things out here, or if all of you are like, no, if I don't have my peeps, Easter hasn't happened, and Jesus hasn't risen, and that is a real problem for me. So I'd be curious to know.
I know in my family, that was largely the one day, like both people that you've all pointed out, like the one day a year that we all went to church. But there was also like an age cutoff. So basically, like one time, like you reached like high school, it became like your choice whether or not you wanted to go. So it's like when I turned 14, my parents were like, "You want to go to Easter service?" And I was like, not really. And they were like, "All right, sure, whatever. We'll be back at the house." And it was like Thanksgiving light. So everybody would either go to the sunrise service or go to church at some point that Sunday. And then it was just basically we're gathering at somebody's house and just having like a big meal. And like young kids might do their Easter egg hunt and everything. But it was like the Easter service was the kickoff. And because that was usually so early in the day and it lasted for freaking ever. But basically once that was over, it was free to be whatever you wanted to do just in your Sunday best. And that was the celebration of the holiday.
I like the Thanksgiving light. I think that's a really, really good way to phrase it.
Yeah, I don't think we really did anything for Easter. Again, being a Jehovah's Witness, sort of kind of everything that is not specifically Jehovah's Witness is sort of seen as bad. And I think Easter is seen as too Catholic or too Protestant for whatever reason. So they don't celebrate it. I don't know. I'm just in it for the candy.
So I just want to mention one quick thing about the bunny. I know a lot of people, especially people who aren't Christian, are like, why do you Christian people are you doing this whole egg bunny thing? And I grant you, it's strange, but it's because the holiday of Easter is based around our crucified Lord, who has literally been beaten up and is dead. We're basically celebrating a corpse. So for the little kids, we have a bunny with eggs and candy. And as they get older, then, we get deeper into the theological component. So if you're wondering why the Easter bunny exists, well, it kind of exists because the story of Easter is not a rated G story. So the Easter bunny helps us celebrate with the little ones a little easier. So I just want to throw that out there for those who are like, what is with the bunny? On top of being like symbolic in many ways, it's performing a sort of cultural function for the youth.
Also, kids like it, and parents like seeing their kids happy. There's a very simple reason why to put an Easter bunny there if your kids don't enjoy it. It's just that like you want kids to be excited about important holidays, and frankly, church service isn't going to do that.
Well, and I'm going to say this. I often take the time leading up to Easter Lent as a time to do some Bible study with my daughter, trying to meet her where she's at by her age. But I also acknowledge that Easter is and Holy Week is probably the best time for memes on Dank Christian memes. You'd think it might be Christmas, and we definitely have some good memes around December, and we definitely see more memes around Christmas time. But Easter is when we tend to see, high quality Jesus focused memes that might get some traction in the front page and stuff like that. So that also, helps me. I'm always happy when the memes are flowing and I've got, more than comments. I've got some nice jokes in my notifications. All right. Do we feel like we're ready to move on to Mother's and Father's Day, or am I leaving anything out on Easter and the like?
I think we're good with moving on.
Okay. So I'm curious to know how you guys approach this. And I've had, weird situations in my family. But I know that for a lot of people, Mother's and Father's Day is really hard because they want to do their best to have a good relationship with their parent. But for many reasons, that isn't easy. So I want to put this out there that for a lot of folks, you might on Mother's Day especially, but maybe Father's Day too, who knows, you might be asked to go to church, especially if that, those are Sundays. And if you don't feel confident that this church experience is going to be a healthy experience for you, you should not agree to do that. That you do not need to feel forced into an unhealthy church situation because you're trying to be good to your mother on Mother's Day, or because you're trying to be good to your father on Father's Day. And I have counseled people who have, I just tried to go along and they got there and they were talking about really divisive stuff and basically, attacking the individual who was just trying to have a moment in church with their parent. So it gets real out there and it gets tough. So I want to be real about that. And, if you feel confident that you can go to this church, check out the website, maybe send an email to their secretary, then yeah, great. But other people are not going to church and are showing appreciation to their parents just as well. So I'm just trying, I'm talking to a very specific audience out there, probably, but I would hate for Mother's and Father's Day to be a situation where church is used like a cudgel against people. So watch out for that. But for the people who aren't thinking like a weird pastor, what do you guys think about these holidays? Are they also corporate, or is this kind of like, kind of like the inverse of the birthday? Like, does it sort of make a certain amount of sense in the grand calendar of holidays and celebrations we tend to observe?
That is exactly what I was going to say. I have always treated them like birthday light. Like, all right, what does mom want? What does dad want? Obviously, we're not going to go as big for this because, again, speaking just in generalities, everybody's parent is having that type of birthday for Mother's Day or Father's Day. But it's like, hey, and I am also a big proponent on giving people what they specifically want for a day like that. So I'll go, hey, mom, what do you want for Mother's Day? Obviously, I might get her like a gift unprompted, but what do you want to do? And if she goes, I want to sit around today and watch stories and blah, 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 blah. It's like, guess what? I'm doing that with my mom that day because that's what she said she wants for Mother's Day. And again, that's not something that would go against, like, in like you were saying, in the church situation. That's not something that puts me in an uncomfortable situation or something that's too far to the realm of what I would want to do or be a part of. And that's just how I treat both days. What does mom want to do? What does dad want to do? What do I think they might want to do? And try to give that to them and just highlight them and thank them, essentially, for, you know, doing a bang-up job with their kid over here. And that's as far as I take it.
Yeah, they're sort of card-giving days with a light gift on the side. That's kind of how it goes, I feel, in my experience. Second birthday, like Troy said.
We're blessed in our family to have on my adopted family side 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. So we have such an abundance of mothers on Mother's Day that it becomes hard for all mothers to feel appropriately celebrated. It's a good problem to have. But there's a sort of logistics, and I've definitely been the fool. If it's Mother's Day and you're thinking of bringing your mother to brunch, well, so is everyone else. And I learned that one the hard way too. So learn from my mistakes, folks. Don't think that the breakfast nook is not going to be packed. It will be.
This is another advertisement again, especially for us fellows out there. Learn to cook. Trust me, it comes in so handy in these moments where you're not scrambling to find somewhere to go.
French toast is easy. French toast is easy, fun to doctor up. You can go minimalist. You can go fancy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, have a breakfast in your back pocket, gentlemen. It's not difficult, ladies. I don't know. I always feel like I'm perpetuating the male stereotype that I can't cook, and it bothers me because I've taken classes on cooking, and like the information is in my brain.
I do.
I find breakfast and I find other fathers like also taking refuge in breakfast. Like, no, this is our place. This is where we do things. And I had a church that had like a second Sunday brunch that was run by mostly the fathers. So like, this is a weirdly gendered meal for me, it turns out.
do like I do and get a sushi mat. Learn to roll sushi. And it's incredibly easy, but you'll immediately be the best at hosting a sushi in any given family setting. Yeah, recommended strategy from Jacob, just dropping it in there.
All right, so unless anyone has any food options to dazzle their parents with, which I think is pretty solid. I think baking or cooking something for your parents is a pretty clever idea. The next one I have up is 4th of July, which is obviously very specific to the United States. Anything before we go there?
Hell.
Aren't you here, NSA agent? We all love this country very much, and we're glad we live here. Okay, thank you.
Yes. I am a hot-blooded Walmart card carrying, wave flagging, eagle screeching American. Yes. No, I'm joking.
I believe,
I would say
and so a friend has actually joined listening. I believe that 4th of July is also the Independence Day of the Philippines from the United States. Is that correct coinage? Listening there in the chat.
That seems very appropriate. While we're waiting for Coinage's response, I want to put the warning here, and Troy, maybe you want to either back me up or step me down here. Don't bring your dogs or your cats. I know a lot of people since the pandemic have started walking their cats. That's great in the right context. I walk all my cats outside in my yard. I know my neighbors set off fireworks during certain parts of the year, and I try not to subject my cats to that. They don't like it when they're inside. So I don't own dogs. I haven't owned dogs, but I have been at fireworks displays, and I'm like, oh my God, this poor dog looks so upset right now.
Also, veterans.
That's my plenty of people with PTSD are triggered by loud noises, period, but loud noises that are intended to resemble like bombs going off.
Gunshots, yeah. It's a thing.
It's a weird weird way to celebrate. I don't even know what exactly we're celebrating because it doesn't seem like we're celebrating veterans, but like we do with our parades. But it's 4th of July is a very interesting time. And I think that the part of our nation has, the sort of politicization of things has made it a trickier holiday to wrap your mind around. I find one thing that helps me, and this is me going full corporate. So please bash me as appropriately. I love Captain America, and everyone seems to be taken aback by like on 4th of July, I'll wear a Captain America shirt, and people are really surprised by that. I'm like, the movies weren't that long ago. He's an Avenger, like. So I found that to be a good way to be like, yo, red, white, and blue, but also like here's a character that in the movies became an enemy of the state. So that's how I walk a line. Well, but
so did the
America,
fathers, so.
Right? There were so many lines walked. Also, I love Hamilton, but oh boy, was he okay with slavery? 4th of July is tricky. I feel like every other country can tell us why 4th of July is problematic. Troy, what are your thoughts on the holidays, especially in the pet department, though? And your icon, my icon is a biblically accurate angel. Yours seems to be some dog-faced sports fella.
It is my dog's head superimposed onto a football player. Like that is exactly it.
So I'm literally talking to your dog's face right now. Yeah, how do you feel?
And that is his actual tongue. That's just a picture of him. His tongue is that big. But no, so I have my dog, Turk, does really well with fireworks. Just because I adopted him right around Memorial Day. And so about a month or so later, when he was still a puppy, people were setting off fireworks for 4th of July. And he took to it. He was just fine. He was like, all right, loud noises, but I wasn't reacting to it, so he never reacted to it. Not everybody has that same experience with their dogs. And yeah, the fireworks are very upsetting to them. So yeah, don't bring your dog to fireworks displays. They don't like it. Not a fan. In terms of the holiday itself, I have always looked at, and I got this like from my grandparents. It's like, yeah, the patriotism doesn't really skew to the Black inner city community that I grew up in the Northeast that same way. So we didn't celebrate 4th of July. Like, yeah, American. It's like, we got a day off. We're having a cookout. That's kind of how our approach to it. As I've gotten older, like there is a bit more of just slight national pride I get. I'm American, proud of that to the extent that I can be. But we got some issues. But you don't tell somebody that like on their birthday, like, hey, I love you, I celebrate you, but you got some issues. Like we can accept this one day as a time to just, all right, we're getting together, we're having a good time. Also, I live in Texas. They do 4th of July really different down here. It's like not fireworks. It is legitimate explosions going off in the state for like 2 days at least. So like you kind of learn to just embrace that part of it and to some extent. But yeah, for me, it's always been, we get a day off, we're having a good time. I'm not going to look that gift horse in the mouth much longer than I need to.
Have you ever been at a fireworks show that went wrong? It's the scariest thing. I was at a show once on a beach in Washington when there was a big like pile of fireworks, and I guess one of them misfired and basically landed in the stash. And from then on, the beach was scrambling as fireworks fired everywhere. I don't know if anyone was hurt. I assume so. It was pretty dramatic, but like
this sounds like a GIF I've seen that seemed really funny at the time, but was in fact a terrible disaster.
Fireworks can go wrong, and I was at something of a distance, but I've seen it happen. So stay safe out there when you're doing it. And personally, the big ones that launch in the air and explode huge. Don't do them if you're a private citizen. Just don't. It can go very wrong.
There are so many more ways it can go wrong than the one way it can go right, and the one way is still an explosion. So realize that.
I mean, it's very peculiar how we tend to celebrate like our military and our country sort of, you know. The military service members and 4th of July sort of go hand in hand, and having planes flying over and simulating bombings to, hey, we love you. We love you so much. Hey, remember that when this cool moment happened? I just threw fireworks at him. It is very peculiar, especially nowadays where everything is like polarizing.
I have to
I
tell
sometimes
you,
like to.
I was really surprised by a flyby once, and without doxing myself, Castor Troy knows I live in a pretty rural area for my state, and there's a lot of rural nooks in New England in general. But we got a flyby for our town's parade, and I was like, "What? Who paid for that?" Or
Yeah,
I guess it was part of. I guess it's part of a training thing, so like it's not actually a big expenditure. They just choose to do their training over that area, and we get excited about it. But I was like, wow. That like one day you're watching like a fife and you like one moment you're watching a fife and drum corps, and that's like neat and historic, and then the jet flies over your head. Like so like even as an American who's like, I got my Captain America shirt, I'm ready for this. Even I have a moment where I'm like hiding under my chair thinking something terrible is about to happen.
Well, again, not to get too deep into like where you might live, but like it's a like legit small, quaint New England town. Like that's got to seem like the future, just flying in out of freaking nowhere. Because that's not what you're. It's not like it's a modern area that you live in.
It was pretty close to a gas station, man. It just made me very nervous. But now I'm like, every time I go to a local parade, I'm like, well, if there's no flyby, is it really worth it? I'm not like now. I want to be terrified. It's
and I think even not just like in every other day, right? This sense. I know we also have like the reveal of a new jet recently came out. And people were like celebrating it. Like they got together to see it fly, which is also kind of like no country does that. Also, one thing that is uniquely American and very patriotic, and no country does it. And I love talking to this with every single person who's not American. Just show them this. Every single baseball game, every single one. We sing the national anthem like midway through the 7-inning stretch. And
are they just trying to wake you up because baseball is boring? I mean, we have a nationalism issue, and that's not wrong. But baseball is boring. So are they just trying to make you? Is it like New Year's Eve, where they're like, "Come on, everybody, we just came back from commercial"? Like, are they just trying to keep you awake for the baseball game?
They try to keep you awake and stretch your legs. And I know that. I don't know much about Boston. Fenway, I know they sing Sweet Caroline. But in New York, they have like an honoring the troops. So they honor like a specific soldier or service member, and they list the amount of tours they did. And I always put this in perspective. Like imagine you were like in, I don't know, like Italy or Spain or whatever, and you stop the game to say, hey guys, there's this soldier right here that fought in this specific battle or in this specific operation. I love when they go into the names of the operations, like in US would be like Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, which is like
Operation Desert Storm. Yeah, there's certain military operations that can be your claim to fame, and when they're reaching for things to say to an audience to keep them engaged, apparently that's where they reach to. I also imagine that it's like on a 4th of July baseball game or near 4th of July, like, oh, veterans free. And then we'll call out, your veteran service to like maybe sort of commodify you a little bit as we try to entertain this audience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always so like
get extra services in the U.S. when they can make someone a little bit of money, but not when they have lifelong issues from their service. And the government refused to pay for it.
Exactly.
So obviously 4th of July is a hotly charged topic. And because we live in America, it's probably always going to be pretty hotly charged. But I realized the one holiday, or maybe it's like a cluster of holidays that we didn't talk about, and I didn't even add to my list, is Halloween. But there's Halloween, there's All Saints Day, and there's also the Day of the Dead, because I can't actually speak Spanish.
Reformation Day. Dia de los Muertos is what you're thinking of.
And right, so we have this weird end of October cluster of holidays. Is it accurate to say that?
Yeah, early November as well, because All Saints Day is actually November 1st.
November
Yeah.
1st, right? Yeah.
So I know some Christian folks are disallowed on Halloween because ghosts, goblins, whatever. I think what I'm seeing in my area, and I actually work at a school, an elementary school, I don't see scary costumes. I see superheroes.
Mhm.
It's superheroes and fairies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Things kids
wondering
actually
if
wanna be.
yeah, I'm wondering if Halloween is actually becoming a little more friendly to the anxious Christian mom out there.
Oh, it absolutely is. Specifically for the reasons you just pointed out. It's definitely more of an American thing. We have, speaking kind of cynically, we have this love and admiration of violence, but we have this super big fear of death in America. Like that's just this weird, like one kind of brings the other, and we don't talk about the other side. So if you look at Latin culture, European cultures, like there's a respect and reverence of just death and passing on that they've worked into certain holidays, where the only one we really have that for, technically it should be two because Easter, like we just talked about, but the only one we have that for is Halloween, where it should be like, hey, this is kind of like, again, a Day of the Dead. Like we're recognizing that death is a part of life, and not so much a celebration of it, but like just an acknowledgement and having some fun with it. And they've stripped all of that, like just over, like even in my years, like we called it spooky season. And yes, we would watch horror movies and it would be kind of scary. And now you've seen it become just safer and more almost saccharine, where all you see is the superheroes and the fairies and things like that. But I'm okay with, and this, I'm saying this as an old man in his 30s now, but I'm okay with the scary side of Halloween. Like, I wish we would bring more of that back. It's okay for kids to feel that little bit of fear in that kind of environment. And also just learn, like, hey, death is a part of life. And why are we waiting until we, quote unquote, think people are ready to have these conversations, but we decide they're not ready until they're 20? Like, I feel like you should be able to have those conversations earlier. and Halloween is a good way to do that. And they're just not doing it anymore.
Yeah. I have a funny Halloween story. This relates to nothing, but I feel like I'm obligated to tell it just because of what this podcast is. So one time in high school, I dressed up as Zeus for Halloween because I really like Greek mythology and I always have. So I had a Santa wig and beard, and I had a like toga and a sash. And I had this lightning bolt that I cut out of plastic, and I was going to Mod Pizza with my cousin who was dressed as Mermaid Man from SpongeBob. Anyway, I go into Mod Pizza, and the people at the counter, like there's a big line, and the people at the counter say, "It's Jesus," and I was like, "No, I'm Zeus, see the bolt," and they were like, "I don't know, man. You look like Jesus to me. Come to the front of the line." And I got like ushered to the front of the line and got my pizza right away.
Did you have your own Jerusalem syndrome thrust on you for a moment? Because
no, I was perplexed. I was like, wow, their commitment to the Lord is so great that they have ushered Zeus to the front of the line in reverence of Jesus Christ. And then I had my pizza.
Or I was hungry and you ushered me to the front of the line that I might eat first.
So wait, how did they not get confused with Santa Claus being Jesus? Because if Santa Claus not wearing red, then it's Santa Claus. But if he's wearing anything else,
so I was dressed as Zeus. So I had like a toga. I used the Santa Claus beard and hat or wig to like
the wig, yeah,
to make that look, because that's how Zeus looks, right? And Santa materials are very readily available. So I think they just took the beard and wig and then looked at the toga and was like, that looks like a Jesus sash. I did have a big red sash, so I guess I looked like a significantly aged version of your classic like Mormon Jesus picture. But
if in the grand scheme of places Jesus has appeared and people Jesus has appeared to supposedly in the past, 1,000 years, this is pretty believable. It's like, oh yeah, he came in, we got him right to the front of the line. He's like, thanks very much, paid in cash, and then he was gone. It was a to-go order. Well, I feel like that's a great Halloween story. The only advice I have on the holiday is grab your candy, but make it last. Don't eat it all at once. That's no good. Any other tips or advice for this cluster of holidays that happen at the end of October, beginning of November?
I always like to use the KISS model. Keep it simple, stupid. Just find something that makes sense and keep it simple always. Try not to get overwhelmed with everything.
I think that's a good place to leave it. So this has been the Dank Christian Memes podcast. If you'd like to connect with our community further, we have social links in our description. You can check that out. Our music is provided by Olive Tiger. Thank you for listening, and until next time, may the memes bless you and keep you.